Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me in the midst of the Led to Lead 2017 conference. My name is Heather Thompson, and I am a transformation life coach, a speaker, and an author coming to you from the Atlanta, Georgia area here in the US of A. It is my pleasure and a privilege to be with you in this incredible and pivotal time in the body of Christ. And I'm excited to be sharing with you this afternoon, morning, or evening, depending upon when you're watching this broadcast. By far, one of the greatest gifts of being a coach is the ability to not only help my clients strategize for the journey ahead, but to get clarity about the roads that they've traveled on and to understand the space that they are currently in. You probably know this personally, but you know what I've noticed about kingdom daughters like us? We're often forward-thinking. We are undeniably tigresses who stand ready to attack anything that comes between us and freedom, between our families and peace, between God's vision and the enemy's desire to kill it. We are prayer warriors and we're prophetic proclaimers. We're powerful and we're also purpose-driven, and we're bleeding. As Bishop T.D. Jakes has so eloquently mentioned, we're quite often leading while bleeding. And you know what's the hardest thing about being bloodied on the battlefield of life? The hardest thing while you're interceding for others, while you're at work and while you're taking on more priorities than you thought was humanly possible, while you're caring for children who seem to need more than the law should allow, while you're constantly there for others, for friends and family and that cousin that no one wants to claim. The hardest thing is you're exhausted. It's not just because of the level of output for the activities that you're doing. It's not just that. For many more of us than we care to acknowledge, it's the lack of return on investment when we come home. Yes, of course, we've got girlfriends, we've got soul sisters, we've got cool confidants, we've got mentors, we've got sorors, we've got church ministry associates. If I name it, you can probably claim it. But for those of us not too ashamed to be honest and to peel back the layers of toughness we wear to keep the weight of the world off, we are bone tired. And without apology, if you're watching this broadcast, I imagine that there's a portion of you saying, yes, that's me. That is me. Because you know that there is no need to hide the truth from Elroy, our God who sees. What can you hide in the presence of the omnipotent one? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The word of God speaks directly to this in Psalm 139, verses 7 through 12, when David wrote these haunting truths in one of my favorite psalms. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. Wow, how beautiful does that sound? How comforting are those words? The answer, I imagine, for many of us is, it sounds quite beautiful, and the images are very comforting. And for all the girlfriends and mentors and shoe shopping sisters that I mentioned earlier, that still doesn't hold this same candle to what a number of you may be quietly feeling. Yeah, that discomfort you're secretly hiding despite the confidence that the world sees. Let's just be honest. You know you are a whole and complete individual, but you feel ready for companionship. No more temporary relationships. No more it could be, he might be, let's see, maybe there's a we. All for it to end in an instant, like a missed shot in the final seconds of a basketball championship. I don't say that to discourage or depress anyone, because singleness is not now, nor will it ever be, a disease. It's a distinct building season where you have the opportunity to become your most authentic self per God's original design for your life. You may be wanting, even feeling like you crave the chance to be Mrs. Right to the man that God intended for you. But before you take that stroll to forever, before you even step foot on that aisle, I'm honored that you stopped by to take part in my session. And that brings us to my subject. Beyond Boaz, 4 keys to kingdom abundance before and after I do. For those unfamiliar with the biblical passage or those who just need a quick refresher, in the book of Ruth, chapters 2 through 4, we are introduced to Naomi and Ruth, 2 widows in search of food during a very harsh time of famine in Judah. Ruth, the younger widow, finds exemplary favor with Boaz, a respected field owner and a man of good standing in the community. He could not be more of a gentleman. By Ruth chapter 4, Boaz and Ruth are married, and they conceive a son, which is a total delight to Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law. Ruth was a woman who was an impressive, Ruth's mother-in-law previously. Ruth was a woman with an impressive capacity to care for those who showed love to her, and she understood the power of submission while avoiding delayed obedience. As with Ruth, there are many principles that we need to honor as a wife. We'll highlight 5 of them today, but first, you need to see why I'm so passionate about this topic. You see, some years ago, the women's ministry at my church was having a panel event and a Q&A session on several different topics concerning today's Christian woman. Now, I was working full-time while being several months pregnant, and with the day having taken a toll on me, I watched the event via live stream on the internet. Translation, my feet were killing me, and my demeanor was definitely less than gracious, so I took myself home. But back to the matter at hand. The Q&A session began, and the women on the panel were all executive leaders in ministry, and in the marketplace as well, and most of them were married. Now, when they answered business-related questions, everyone paid attention, and there was a short line of women at each microphone stand in the aisles who wanted some advice. But when the topic shifted to personal relationships, especially concerning marriage, dating versus courtships, and so on, the line looked like the world's best stylist was offering free gel manicures. Everything flowed smoothly, and the answers were either thoughtful or hilarious, maybe even a little sad. But there was this one woman who approached the microphone. She was tall and she exuded kindness, but I detected this undercurrent of irritation. You know how you can just look at someone and see if there's something going on, but they don't quite want to address it? Well, she cleared her throat before asking her question. Yes, good evening. I just wanted to ask the panel, how do you hold on? I mean, I've been single for a while now, and I'm good with myself, but I'm ready to be in a stable and, a good relationship. What advice would you have for me on preparing myself to be married? Well, I sat there and just, leaned forward a little bit to hear the answer, knowing the panel was just going to knock it out of the park. And one of our beloved elders, she too leaned forward into her microphone and said something very similar to, there's definitely ways to get ready for a relationship, for the marriage that God has for you, but you're at a point where you can do so much for yourself. You have the liberty to start a business, to get promotions and do whatever you want to do before you get the man. And that's a beautiful thing. The panel started nodding in agreement, loving the advice, ad-libbing yes and absolutely amen to what the elder said. Another panelist chimed in with, "Ma'am, she's right. Taking care of yourself and whatever you have to do first is best. But you're in a wonderful season of your life. You really are. This is the best time for you instead of focusing on a relationship." What I wouldn't do to have that time again. You go, girl, and you do what God has given you. And it all seemed, just so encouraging, and it was refreshing until the camera cut back to that audience member, still at the microphone. Her irritation, now it was clearly visible. I remember her disappointment was set in her jawline. She just had this stern face, and the hurt showed most prominently in her response. She said, "I understand that this is a great time in my life, and that's well and good, but I'm tired of doing this all alone." And she turned, and she slumped her shoulders and walked back to her seat, looking much more like a dejected teenager than a grown woman. But I understood. The cameraman held his angle on her while the panel just panel just stuttered and kind of stammered their way past her response. We moved on. To the next question, but my attention remained focused on that woman in my mind. Now let me make myself clear. I respect the panel's response that evening. It is not easy to answer questions when they are coming at you, and you do want to be sensitive to everyone that has a request or a concern. And though I don't say this out of ridicule, I feel that we left that sister underserved that evening. I remember thinking, how did she feel when she walked out later that evening? Because it kept bothering me. What happened when she went home? And why didn't we just say more to her instead of breezing past the answer? Well, as God and life have taught me, when you encounter a situation where a question has gone unanswered, it's often because you are supposed to be the one to find or work to provide the answer. I dedicate my session to every one of you who may be saying just what that brave woman did. What advice would you have for me on preparing myself to be in a relationship? What advice would you have for me on preparing to be married? I understand that this is a great time in my life, but I'm tired of doing this all alone. Well, today, you are not alone, Queen. There are many keys to forward movement in this time, but I've been given 5 to share with you. So let's do some good work, shall we? Number 1, understand your own purpose before you seek to align with someone else. Understand your own purpose before you seek to align with someone else. Jeremiah 29, verse 11 tells us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." That promise can feel light years away when you're watching women post the happiest photos you've ever seen on Instagram on their anniversary, and when your friend cancels you on a night when you just didn't want to hang out solo. But no matter the occasion or the feeling, God's will is His word, and His word is eternal. If you question that, then remember what John 1:1 proclaimed. In the New International Version, it reads, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And I love the impact that the New Living Translation provides. So listen to this. In the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. Keep that in mind. The Word already existed. So what do all these words mean for you? Well, that means that you are anything but forgotten. You were powerfully and purposefully predestined. I'll say that again. You were and are powerfully and purposefully predestined. I do not care what anyone told you about why you are here, who's dumped you, who's loved you, and who's left you. The eternal truth is that you have a purpose, and it cannot be erased. And before you try to unite with anyone on a lifelong basis, you need to absolutely be tuned in to what that purpose is. You're not supposed to know every single thing about your life, but you must know who you are past the job you have, the clothing labels that you wear, or even the people who call you friend. What would you do for free on a daily basis? Devote yourself for hours to it. Push past your own fatigue to finish it and still wake up ready to do it all again. What would that be? What in this world inspires you to say, "For this cause was I born, I'm needed here"? What makes your blood boil? What makes your eyes water? Or what makes your feet dance when you hear about it? Before you seek to become Mrs. Anyone, ma'am, the question is, who are you? The same question applies even if you are already married. If you don't intimately know what you need, what moves you, what drives you, what irks you, how can you effectively communicate that to someone else? Can you imagine how many people have run screaming to divorce court saying, "Please cut this noose off from around my neck. I want to get out of this prison called marriage," only to find out that they were the problem? Their own lack of understanding and a desire to have what this friend and that enemy had drove them to the place where they threw off the wedding band and screamed, "I don't." If you have not, and even if you have before, I encourage you now to spend some time with just you and the Lord. Yeah, put the smartphone on airplane mode for even just 1 hour. And if you really want to do it, get to a quiet spot in nature. Visit the mountains or even head to the water's edge. There is nothing like worshiping the Lord at the beach. Quiet yourself, empty yourself before God and ask Him, why am I here? Who was I before the world spoke to me and over me? What am I supposed to impact for your kingdom? Before you bring me home, what is my task before I leave this earth? Then be willing to wait for the answers. Our Father loves to dispense His wisdom, but the question is, have you asked for it? Understand your own purpose before you seek to align with someone else. That brings us to point number 2. Recognize the reasons you want to be married in the first place. Again, recognize the reasons you want to be married in the first place. So since we're all women here, can I share a secret with you? The aspiration to marry means nothing if our attitudes and examples of marriage would lead to divorce. It means nothing. You have to recognize the reasons why you want to be married in the first place. If you're dating or in a courtship, has God spoken to you about the person you're with? Did you take heed of His answer, or did you mold it to fit your desire? Have you taken the time to understand what marriage truly entails? The idea of being connected with one spirit having a human experience on this earth sounds utterly romantic, but have you considered what that truly means? One thing we don't want to acknowledge the weight of is that more women are opting to wait until marriage, to be virgins until their wedding night. Others are choosing celibacy after previous partners. Now, both choices are wonderful, but when you've been waiting for quite some time, especially if you've had the experience before, the temptation can increase. Standards can start to shift around like cars being shuffled in a deck. People and things you previously wrote off as nevers can suddenly turn into, well, maybes. As in, maybe I was wrong about him. Maybe he should have my number. And maybe I misunderstood God when I thought He said, that's not the one. Sis, please, don't let your discomfort allow you to decrease. Do not allow your discomfort to cause you to decrease. Waiting is never pleasant, but as the late author and speaker Jim Rohn said, we must all suffer from one or two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The difference is discipline weighs ounces, while regret weighs tons. Who among us can afford to carry tons? Instead, carry the ounces. If you want to prepare for marriage someday, or you simply want to focus on being a better woman, discipline yourself. You want some examples? Don't make excuses for the times you don't work out. Find the time to exercise. Don't say, I don't like having female friends. Learn how to be a friend and get a strong circle around you. Don't complain in the break room or around the water cooler at work about not getting a promotion. Position yourself for the job you want, whether at that company or someone else, and get ready for the opportunity that will present itself when it's time. Don't say, I wish I could have gone back to school. Go back. Go back. Get your financial aid in order if necessary. Find the right program and institution that's best for you, and if you have one, your family, so that things can work around your available hours, and pursue your education. And finally, in honor of this particular broadcast that you're watching, don't say that there aren't any good men available. Be strategically social. Now note the use of the word strategically. Keep in mind who you are and whose you are. and begin to actually be seen with more than a pack of negative friends around you, or the one fearful friend who will cling to you in social situations because they're too scared to venture out on their own. Start visiting the places that you want to see, and regardless of who's with you, and let your light in those rooms. Let your light shine in those rooms that complement it. For every scenario, there is a solution. And for every desire that we have, there is a root cause. We just must be willing to find it. Recognize the reasons you want to be married in the first place. Number 3, be able to stand on your own and enjoy your own company. Y'all still with me? Number 3, be able to stand on your own and enjoy your own company. There is a mindset that comes before being a wife, and that's successfully being a single woman. Do you enjoy your own company? Can you be with just yourself and God and be good? Meaning, can you be at peace, be productive, and be proactive about the things that God has called you to do without constantly having to have someone present, especially if all he is a placeholder or eye candy? Sometimes the toughest part about singleness is answering the call that God has given you and working through it alone. Waking up alone, sleeping alone, and not having an immediate sounding board to say, hey, that's great, baby, or hold up, let's reconsider this angle over here. And I know some of you out there, maybe there's a twinge of irritation in your heart. Maybe there's just a sliver of dissatisfaction with the married women you've spoken to because we keep telling you, oh, girl, focus on yourself. You are at a beautiful time in your life and you can do what you want to do without checking in with anyone. Right? Why rush that? God's got you. You so tired of us? On their behalf, seriously though, please allow me to say, I am so sorry. I'm sorry. We forget. It's true. We simply forget to look deeper. Because, well, like I said earlier, if you just lean in a little closer, I'll tell you a secret. Sometimes when you're in a partnership, you get stuck on the surface. Sure, spouses pray for the man or the woman that they've got, for their development, for the hidden things. Yeah, we cover a lot, but once you throw a child or children into the mix, whoo, hello, you start focusing on the surface much, much more. So here, why don't I just let me help you understand what I mean with a few examples of what an unfiltered day in the life of a wife and mother can look like. Are the kids' lunches made? Or are they buying lunch today? Oh, they're buying lunch today? Oh, no, babe, Timothy's allergic to garlic. He can't have the pizza at school. Shoot, let me rush and put something together. Are they carpooling to soccer this week? But which one of the moms has her turn? Tasha. Oh, Lord, she has a death in the family. She's out of town. Can you call Carrie and see if she can do it? Oh, did I buy enough hamburger buns for the cookout this weekend? Oh, his mom is coming next weekend, and I won't have time to clean like I wanted to with the conference going on at work. What's the name of that cleaning service that what's her name told me about? Oh, I wish Mom would just come next month like we said, but I know she wants to be here for her grandbaby's baptism. And oh, Lord, I've got to call the caterer and make sure they know it's for 50 people and not 42 like we said. Did I talk to him already? See where I'm going? Do you get the picture? Surface issues. All things that matter for a finite, particular amount of time. And with those concerns becoming interwoven with our daily habits, those habits become a lifestyle. And our lifestyles are made evident in our conversations. So when we see you, our beautiful single sisters, striding through life with God's hand upon you, we end up correcting your cries instead of comforting them. And that's why I hope you'll accept my apology on behalf of all of us. Truly. Many married Christian women were told about the value of our worth in marriage, and that only gets reiterated after marriage. My husband Brian and I have been blessed with 3 daughters. We are very fulfilled with that number. We're not looking to have any more. And the fact that they're girls, we're still happy about that, even on the craziest of days. But you know what? It's in church. It's in church where we face the most questions, the most curiosity, and sadly, the most unsolicited correction about just trying for one more because you got to have that boy. None of these well-intentioned people, however, ever ask us about how we're doing as a couple, how I'm handling the balance of being a mom to a new child, if the girls are adjusting well, how we're handling 3 kids and 2 business brands. They just want us to add a boy to our family so our family can be complete. And if I weren't secure in myself because God already spoke the 3 children to us, but they don't know that. And if I weren't secure in myself, do you have any idea how that would tear at the very fibers of my being? How that could eventually stress out and wear on my marriage, even to the point of pulling it apart and ourselves are in the process. But neither he nor I could stand up for ourselves sufficiently without having had the time to learn who we were before the spouse or the parenting roles, when our dining tables and our cell phone plans were set up for a party of one. Can you honestly say the same? That's not a matter of disrespect, sis. I'm seriously asking. Can you honestly say the same? Are you good on your own? This is why, for all these reasons and more, this is why it's essential to be able to stand on your own and enjoy your own company. Because standing on your own and enjoying your own company means you must be able to discern the company that you keep. That brings us to point number 4. Recognize the counterfeits and have the strength to uproot them from your life. Recognize the counterfeits and have the strength to uproot them from your life. I imagine that at some point in your childhood, you ran out into a big field, like I did, or even your front yard, and you picked up a few dandelions. You might have been very happy with this pretty yellow find, and you gathered them up for maybe your best friend, your mother, maybe an aunt or grandmother. It was even more fun when the white part of the dandelions, the seeds, turned into what people call dandelion puffs, and you could gently just blow them away and watch them float off into a breeze. That was pretty, right, when that happened? And it stayed pretty and it remained fun until someone burst your bubble and told you, that's a weed, baby. Dandelions are weeds. It messed you up a little bit. Those pretty little flowers turned out to be weeds. And as you got even older, you learned that weeds are problematic to maintaining a healthy lawn. I bet you realize where I'm heading with this one, don't you? Some of us are still entertaining dandelions in human form. Oh, they look harmless and even pleasing to the eye. They seem like they offer something of substance, but in reality, their very presence is a problem. They can't offer you more than appearance and distraction. And you know what's the saddest part? Sometimes we really want that. We want people around us who provide escapism when life gets tough, a thrill when normal is just too mundane. It can happen to those who've been walking with the Lord for a long time, and we get tired of feeling like life has turned into one endless day on repeat. That's when we let our guards down and let people pass the gates in our lives that discernment, wisdom, and experience work together to construct. That's when we invest in relationships. That's when we invest in relationships that are not worth the time we never should have given them in the first place. One of my greatest joys as a transformation life coach is watching clients experience breakthroughs. It is so exciting to watch someone abandon a mindset that is no longer serving them. On the other hand, it's absolutely frightening to see a client cling to someone that was never benefiting them in the first place simply because they want to get married and they either don't want to throw away potential or all these years. Here's a reminder. Ephesians 5 verses 15 through 17 tells us to be very, very careful. Be very careful then how you live. not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. God does not want you or I or anyone wasting their life, waiting for someone who may be stringing you along so as not to lose you. Like a cake in a bakery store window, people of all kinds can see what you're made of. Your heart, your consistency, your ethics, your strength, your willingness to persevere, and so much more. Consider this. Could it be that the level of love that someone offers you is only as healthy or as tainted as the person themselves? We essentially learn from birth that love equates to what people will do for you and how you feel about the things that they do. As toddlers, we repeat, "I love you," when a parent, a sibling, or someone else tells us that. It becomes a response to affection, attention, and agreement. Now, obviously, as a believer in Jesus Christ, we understand the 1 Corinthians 13 definition that love is patient, love is kind, love is long-suffering. It doesn't keep a record of wrongs, and so on. You're giving it. I get that. But are you receiving it? Please don't let emotionalism keep you from considering excellence, most notably in the area of accepting a subpar situationship instead of a defined relationship. The labels we've started taping onto damaging connections and worthless sacrifices of our time, money, energy, and even, yes, our bodies have only left us with more baggage and new battle scars. The worst part? We're getting wounded in battles that we didn't even have to engage in the first place. If you want your life to thrive, you have to be willing to get rid of the weeds. No matter how pretty or natural they look or how harmless they seem, no matter how difficult they are to remove, or even if they try to come back, as weeds often do, be willing to call a thing exactly what it is. Weeds will never be flowers, and counterfeits make terrible kings. Recognize the counterfeits and have the power to uproot them from your life. We're still going. Number 5, you can build or destroy your life through the power of your own tongue. Let's say that again. You can build or destroy your own life through the power of your tongue. From the fruit of their mouth, a person's stomach is filled. With the harvest of their lips, they are satisfied. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Is your fruit filling, or is it poisoning you? Television has done a wonderfully dangerous job of telling a woman how powerful she is. She is loved, admired, and entertaining when she adopts a slick mouth method, using her words like a machine gun, firing on everyone, deserving or otherwise, in her path for a comedic effect. She is also hated, reviled, and yet still entertaining on reality shows when she curses, belittles, and pronounces punishment on anyone she feels has disrespected her, done her wrong, or simply got in her way at a bad time. Women, especially women of color, are being painted as out-of-control toddlers with an insatiable need to out-talk their enemies. And even some of us in the church are buying into this philosophy. Too often, women, we have to have the last word. We cut off our friends when they tell us we're wrong if we feel so justified. We're overly sensitive in the sanctuary and vocal at Sunday brunches when our pastor preaches a message that hits us with conviction. For my single mothers, we tell our children harsh words that just really harsh words that we didn't mean to say, and then we wonder why they struggle with obedience and even to love us in return. And then we take all of that, try to compact it, dress it up with makeup and heels, and make an attempt to be found by Mr. Right. But before he finds you, please ask God to guard your mouth. One of my favorite quotes by Iyanla Vanzant reminds us that my mouth is the stable of my power. What exactly are you letting out of your stable? Are they wild horses that can't be bridled, doing whatever they please because they've never known discipline or boundaries? Or are they tamed, groomed show horses who understand the routes to take and know that rewards come from a job well done? There isn't a husband in the world who wants to feel like he doesn't have to die to go to hell because he already lives there with you. While sassiness can be cute and even attractive in playful moments in certain settings, let's not get sassiness confused with being verbal assassins. Words build worlds. Words build worlds. God demonstrated this in Genesis better than anything else ever could. Your words could mean the difference between your spouse opening his business during a recession or believing it's impossible. Your words can mean that your future child believes that they can achieve their biggest goals or they're just going to play it safe. You could pray with an addict, and that moment could be the breakthrough between a life of substance abuse or a renewed life submitted to the Holy Spirit. You have the power given by the omnipresent Most High God to be a life liver or a dream killer. A life giver or a dream killer. And every single day, the enemy is hoping that you will choose the latter. And if you want to please him, go ahead. Keep saying you're too tired to care about what happens next when things go wrong. Keep on saying that your ideas are too expensive. Keep proclaiming that there are no good men out here. Keep battling people on Facebook and Instagram who oppose the church instead of praying for them and going on about your day. Keep right on being pulled into conversations, news reports, and entertainment that say there's no hope for any situation that you can think of. Just keep on. All of it pulls away from the one name that everything and everyone will eventually have to bow before. Ladies, it's time for us to bow. It can be difficult and it is a daily process, but we have to bow again before the King. Sometimes we don't even realize the desires, the memories, and the unspoken hurts that we place around ourselves like barbed wire, keeping the world out and locking the pain in. Before you seek unity with someone else, please seek a divorce from anything, absolutely anything, that's keeping you from freedom in Jesus Christ. Some of us have everything in order except the ability to let a man be honest with you, to accept him for where he is and for what he is not yet. As I've said before, too often we're demanding to have our own Barack Obamas when we're not quite Michelle. We are. My question to you is, even if you had your own Barack, would you know how to speak to him? Your words, once again, they build worlds. Your words are fruit. What kind of a world are you living in? And is the fruit safe to eat? A few months before getting married, I remember attending a special service at my former church. I was a few months away from the altar, and I was pretty consumed with thoughts about guest list management, and who knows what else. When the service started, I was pretty caught up, but that abruptly changed by the night's end. As our pastor was drawing to a conclusion, he invited all of the mothers up to the altar. By the time that space had filled up with women waiting for prayer, there were less than 10% of us still in our seats. At first, our pastor's prayer was about covering the women and keeping them on the right path. But the moment soon shifted. The prayer became more about addressing the hidden hurts carried by all at the altar, for healing due to feeling invisible, and the constant giving that marriage and motherhood required. The mood changed from sweet and gentle to somber and insistent when the women began weeping, some even wailing in sadness and what looked like anguish, likely even some disbelief. It was some of the most painful crying and just laying out before the Lord that I had ever seen. The heaviness in the room draped us all like a weighted blanket. I can still see the tears today. I can still hear those cries today. Though I knew God was working that night, by the time the prayer ended, I wanted to run outside and postpone marriage indefinitely. I'm not even sure if I wanted to date anymore. But I also knew, however, that the answer was not running away. The 50 billion, that's billion with a B, wedding industry that we have here in the U.S. is counting on you to be a bride, but it is not betting on your marriage. Since childhood, we as women, we're groomed to want the family dynamic, to dream of being princesses like the ones we see in animated fairy tales, and to devote a consuming portion of who we are to attracting and pleasing a man. By no means am I here to bash marriage, of course not, especially not for the Christian community. But I definitely am entirely sick of seeing women getting sucked into that wedding whirlpool where a lack of understanding and even loneliness may influence them to rush to the altar only for them to go running to a divorce lawyer later. With that in mind, let's focus on a new beginning concerning marriage and concerning getting married. And with 7 symbolizing completeness and perfection in the Bible, here are 7 bonus tips to help you and to help give you a solid foundation before and after your marriage. Number 1, you have to have a strong identity in Jesus Christ. Know this up front. Adulthood, whether single or married, is not the time to rely on your ancestors' prayers or their faith. Right where you are is the prime time to develop a personal relationship with the Lord, to intimately know His voice in every season of your life before that life is shared with someone else. Can you imagine running a 10K race without having done even one sit-up in the months beforehand? Runners are often trained year-round for big marathons because they know they need the physical, the mental, and the emotional preparation. Why not think of marriage the same way? Developing a consistent prayer life, studying the Word, and having mutually beneficial connections to other individuals in the faith are just a few ways that you can help ensure the strength of your relationship with God. Number 2, make sure to maintain positive relationships with those who can remind you of the person you were. Now, here's the disclaimer. I am not suggesting that you call up, your former club buddies or the people who knew you during only a rough or rebellious time in your life. No, I'm saying instead, make sure that you keep in more than just LinkedIn touch with the friends who knew what you wanted to be in life before life changes hit. Instead of only commenting on each other's social media posts, actually call and meet up with the prayer partners you met at previous conferences and former jobs. Marriage and parenthood have a way of redefining you at times, and it can be hard to see past the tunnel vision of your own life and home. It's a beautiful time when you start a family, and it's a gift, but it's also a very consuming one. Keep the lines of communication open with people who remember when you were just a party of one and can help you stay connected to the dreams, to the vision, and the ideas that God gave you to ensure that you are still a good steward over them. Number 3, know that change will come. During my days in Charlotte, I bonded with a newly married couple who always had great advice to share. One day before church, the husband, Maurice, and I were talking about my plans for life in Atlanta. He shared with me something out of the blue that I've not forgotten, and I've committed myself to telling others. Here's something you need to remember, he said. Now he pulled off his wedding band and he held it up to make a point. This band is lightweight. It's light as a feather when it's off. But when I put it back on, that's when I feel how heavy it is. Commitment is attached to this. My vows are attached to this. It's my reminder. At some point after you get married, you're going to think that you made a mistake. It's not going to take long either, but when it happens, just remember that though your ring feels heavy in that moment, it's a reminder of your commitment, of your vows, and that God is still the center of your marriage. Let Him take the weight of it, and you handle the rest. Change will come. As women, we can magnify the small things and make mountains out of the big things. But whatever you encounter in your relationship, or even before you enter into one, be sure to give everything over to God in prayer. Proclaim the outcome you're expecting in faith and seek God for wisdom. Never carry the weight of it on your own. Let the power of intercession and a trusted few to speak with when necessary lift you up. We're rolling right along. Number 4, know the vision. Do you have a vision, God's vision for your marriage? In the final years before her passing, talk show host Tavis Smiley interviewed the late Coretta Scott King. During the broadcast, Tavis asked Mrs. King why she never remarried. Her answer to me was brilliant, because she replied to him that she knew that she was supposed to join her husband, and that she was joined to her husband, the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and she did not feel called to anybody else. In another interview, when she was asked about being married to Dr. King during the years of the Montgomery bus boycott and all that time that they're preparing to start a movement, she mentioned that there was pressure from her family and others regarding the dangers of being in this highly visible marriage while facing bomb threats and even actual bombings to their home. Listen to her words. I realized that if I continued with my husband in the struggle, I could be killed. I knew that if we were doing God's work and doing the right thing, God would protect us. I turned inward and I did a lot of soul searching and praying and came to this understanding. It doesn't mean that I could avoid being killed. I could be killed. But I had an inner peace and a satisfaction, and you have that if you feel that you are doing the right thing and doing what God intends you to do. After our house was bombed, I had to come to peace within myself that I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be right here because this is right. What we're called to do. What are you called to do? If you're married or planning to be, do you know what you're supposed to accomplish together? What changes or change are you called to focus on, develop, or lead in this world? If you have questions or deeper concerns about what I'm talking about, please look up the incredible book, You and Me Forever, Marriage in the Light of Eternity, a book by Francis and Lisa Chan. I think it'll bless you greatly and remind you of what God wants us all to remember, that this journey is a faith walk that ultimately isn't about us, but God's vision to be accomplished through us. Number 5, know your definition of love. Do you love your spouse or your future spouse for who he is or what he does? Have you experienced any time with him outside of the perfect date or structured activities? You have to know what love is to the both of you. You don't want to be so focused on getting the ring that you overlook the importance of building your relationship, setting fundamentals in place that can actually withstand the trials of life. See, infatuation is temporary, but love remains in all seasons. It is so hard to be determined to hold on to anything if you don't know the reasons why you want to be married in the first place. And if your why is weak, that why won't be strong enough to carry you through any rough seasons. You absolutely have to know what your definition of love is and be very aware of your spouse's. Number 6, don't be attached to a package. Years ago, I was talking to a friend on the phone, and she stunned me when she admitted that she did not think that God would bring her a man who already had children. She said, I just don't think that God would do that to me. She went on to say that the scenario was less than ideal, and though she loved children, she only wanted to have them with her husband and not through being a step-parent to anyone. Does that sound familiar to any one of you? Are you so attached to a package that you couldn't receive love outside of the design that you imagined? The man that may sweep you off of your feet, so to speak, may not be the tall, chocolate gentleman you imagine. You might be able to look him in the eye without heels on. He might have an associate's degree instead of that MBA you wanted. Maybe he won't be an all-out sports fanatic like your dad taught you to look for, but perhaps he likes live comedy shows and Broadway plays. He might even have a child or two from a previous relationship, and they could be the best thing you never knew you needed. We can get so locked in to what we prefer that we don't realize what we're locking out, and that could be the experience of a lifetime. Which brings us to our final and probably our most delicate topic. Number 7. The children may not come the way you planned. I'm sure if we were all in an actual room together and I asked you if you knew a couple who had difficulty conceiving, that hands would ease up all around the room. If we're being honest. And this is a prime example of why it's best to know what God's assignment is for your life. Couples can lose time, thousands of dollars, and even each other in the quest to become biological parents. It's not my place to judge anything on this topic, nor am I trying, so please don't take offense. But I can try to advise you. Please consider doing regular check-ins with your spouse about what the wait or the process to conceive is doing to you if you're having difficulty, individually and collectively. If you're willing, have the conversation in front of a seasoned married couple that you trust, or even a professional who can help you sort through the details and decide what to do next. Also, like anything else, please seek God on the matter first. What if the children you're called to raise are your current nieces or nephews? Have you asked God if adoption is a part of His plan for you? Can your marriage survive if you don't get the child that has your eyes or has your husband's laugh? Can it survive? None of these things are what anyone wants to consider, but I'd only be sugarcoating if I didn't. We say, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, till death do us part, but no one truly expects to be bound by them, and that's a big, big mistake. Be willing, please, to let God define what your family should look like, even if that means being stretched outside of your comfort zone. You never know what unbelievable journeys are on the other side of your yes to the King of Kings. One of the hardest things about teaching women is that for all of our sensitivity and intuition that God's given us, we've lost a great deal of transparency. Somewhere between the ages of 18 and 25, we began to cover up, to start hiding the things that we're going through. I think that, though I enjoy it, social media plays a role in this. Think about it. You can put a filter on your unmade-up face, and you've got suddenly perfect, maybe even radiant, glowing skin. Get a group of friends around you, some lights behind you, and some funny faces when you're out in public, and it looks like you're having the time of your life, but you could be having the worst night in the last 5 years. But how many of us know that you cannot airbrush pain? That there'll never be an app great enough to edit out unresolved issues. I've been a poet for most of my life, and though I've said quite a lot already, I realize that the best way for me to get a point across in front of many audiences is through the artistic form. So, bear with me. I would like to dedicate this to all of you, and I pray that you can receive the message well. This is called Still Sisters. You used to braid your hair. You had those long locks pulled back in a ponytail while we double-dutched our way through summer heat and bought Jolly Ranchers from that candy man down the street. We told each other secrets as we dove into pools, splashed our cares away in the months between school, played tag till it turned into hide and seek, felt like the magic would last forever, but then The teenage years began to creep. They eased in through the window like smooth criminals. Now, we still went to vacation Bible school, but that was really to hang out near the boys that we said we never thought would be cool. But they started to notice us, and we noticed them, and hey, life was fine until competition snuck in, and well, everything changed on a dime. I mean, suddenly we had to be fly when we went to the mall because we couldn't just pick up and go like we used to do because we knew we'd walk past them all, the Andres and the Tims and the Maliks that each tried to shoot their shot. And though we swore we'd always have each other's backs, suddenly we were not all we got. We were applying for the same scholarships, submitting to the same colleges. From GPAs to hairstyles, a good, better, best mentality took over all of it, and yet we stayed silent. Kept our cries quiet while we hugged goodbye at graduation. Opportunity took us to different coasts, but like our parents and grandparents, we only focused on the celebration. We emailed each other, "Hey girl," messages, and that brought us smiles. We read each other's rundowns on life, undergrad style. But somewhere along the way, adulthood was knocking at our doors. And we didn't have a clue things wouldn't be the same anymore because sin showed up. Sin showed up. Shame crept in. Self-esteem started applying foundation and eyeshadow to insecurity, and the greatest cover-ups began. Oh, we were tearing it up in the classroom, but the dorms and the weekends were where things went left. Instead of saying, "I lost my virginity last night and I'm scared," we boasted that we aced our latest test. We didn't mention the drug that was offered to us the week before or the 15 pounds we gained that made us feel we weren't pretty anymore. We stuffed the depression down deep, so deep that when we got on the phone, we talked about everything other than the fact that we felt we couldn't go home. And the three-ring circus continued. We didn't go to church or visit the grandparents quite like we used to because we felt that like a bad fragrance, the stench would seep through. Everybody would see our ugliest truths. Everyone would see that we didn't understand. Growing up wasn't the party we thought it was going to be, and we bought right into the enemy's plan. And all the while, we could have reached up for the Father's outstretched hands. And we finally did. We finally did years after we lost touch, because after too many emotional beatdowns, we turned back to Jesus when the pain became too much. So we started seeing each other again at the Essence Fest and the Mega Fest and everything in between. But there was still this need to cover up because the wounds were still too raw from all we'd seen and all we'd heard along this journey. The broken, jagged roads that led us home. But I'm not afraid anymore to be transparent because that's all I have before his throne, and I don't want to be in competition with you anymore. I don't want men and accolades between us, and in the end, accomplishments don't mean a thing. You know I'm happy. I'm so happy for your success, and I believe vice versa, but sometimes, just sometimes, I want to take it back to the swings because I remember you. You used to braid your hair. Yeah, you used to braid your hair, and you had those long locks in a ponytail while we double dutched our way through summer heat and bought Jolly Ranchers from the candy man down the street. I finally see I need you to survive. Just like the song says, I need my prayer partner to be my old friend who knew me back when we were eating Pez. Do you remember that, Candy? Just like you remember me. And now today, we're strong enough to remind ourselves not to forget Calvary. I can help you when you fall, and you can tell me when I'm wrong or right. And instead of enduring warfare alone, we can be the two to put 10,000 to flight. Because we used to run the streets, and now we dance in the church aisles. We go back like four flats on a Cadillac, and now in a spirit of unity, we rise. We are still sisters. You are the treasure God knew I would need. Now let's get to the levels. Let's get to the levels he intended. Let's get back to being queens. It has been my joy. It has been my absolute joy to join you all today. And I hope that what I've said has been beneficial to you and you can use it in your prayer time and in healthy dialogue with others. I pray God's blessings upon you in the name of Jesus the Christ, that grace and peace be with you, and that this new season takes you to heights previously unimagined and through doors that you have longed to witness. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, and I want to see all of us thrive for His glory. I'm Heather Thompson, and we are sisters. Thank you for your time. God bless you, and take care.